All right, Niners fans, let's dive into what's going on with San Francisco right now, because the updates keep rolling in and the team finds itself at a very interesting crossroads. The news started with some moves around the practice squad. Rookie safety Derek Canteen, who came in as an undrafted free agent and showed flashes of potential during training camp, was released. There is still a good chance that San Francisco circles back and brings him into the practice squad to continue his development. At the same time, defensive end Robert Beal has been promoted to the active roster. This move felt inevitable, especially after the injuries that have piled up. And let's be honest here, there is no replacing Nick Bosa. The only way forward is by committee, and that means several guys stepping up to try and fill the void. Beal might be raw, but if he can provide even a little spark, it could make a huge difference. Robert Beal is an intriguing story in himself. Drafted in the 5th round back in 2023 out of Georgia, he was part of that powerhouse Bulldogs program that collected back-to-back national titles. Coming out of high school, he was a 5-star recruit, loaded with promise, but playing for a roster stacked with NFL talent meant he rarely got the chance to stand out. During his time at Georgia, he only started 10 games across 5 seasons, which tells you just how crowded that defensive line was. Still, scouts and coaches were fascinated by his measurables. He stands 6'4", weighs around 250 pounds, and ran an eye-popping 4.48 in the 40-yard dash during the pre-draft process. When you move that fast at that size, you instantly grab attention. He also brings a wingspan close to 7 feet, which makes him a nightmare to deal with on the edge. The issue has never been his athletic gifts. It has always been about polish, experience, and technique. At Georgia, he never quite broke through, and in the NFL so far he has logged just over 20 tackles and a single sack. But San Francisco believes in his upside, and if there's ever a moment for him to flash what he can do, it's now. The Niners are in a delicate spot because Nick Bosa is not just another defender. He is one of those rare players who tilts the field and forces every offense to adjust its game plan. Without him, the defense loses that automatic pocket collapse and constant pressure on the quarterback. That means the defensive coaching staff needs to get creative. Robert Saleh has already shown in the past how to manufacture pressure through blitzes, stunts, and disguises, and the Niners might lean heavily on that approach. We've already seen young players like G.I. Brown starting to take on hybrid roles, shifting between nickel and linebacker responsibilities, which adds versatility to the defense. Brown's snap count in that role jumped significantly from Week 1 to Week 3, and this flexibility could be crucial as San Francisco experiments with different looks to keep quarterbacks uncomfortable. The bigger conversation, though, is whether the front office led by John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan will dip back into the trade market. Historically, this organization has not been shy about making bold in-season moves, and everyone remembers the Christian McCaffrey deal as proof. Now, with Bosa sidelined, ESPN has already suggested that San Francisco is one of the teams to watch ahead of the trade deadline. Injuries are piling up across the roster, and while the Niners are off to a strong start at 3 wins and 0 losses, the reality is that you cannot bank on surviving a long season without consistent pressure on opposing quarterbacks. So the question is whether the team will ride it out with the current rotation or strike a deal for another edge rusher. When you think about potential trade candidates, there are some really intriguing names. A big-time splash would be someone like Trey Hendrickson, who has been one of the most productive pass rushers in the league over the last couple of years. He has piled up over 17 sacks in back-to-back seasons and continues to disrupt every offensive line he faces. The downside is that he would cost a lot, maybe a first-round pick, and you'd have to figure out a contract situation since he is due for an extension. But can you imagine Hendrickson lining up opposite Bosa once Bosa returns? That would be terrifying for any offensive coordinator. If the Niners are looking for a younger, ascending player, Travon Walker is another name that jumps out. Drafted number 1 overall in 2022 by Jacksonville, Walker is a freak athlete who is still developing but has shown steady improvement. His sack numbers have climbed every season, and he is strong against the run as well as dangerous rushing the passer. At just 23 years old, his best football is likely ahead of him, And if San Francisco could land him without paying as steep a price as Hendrickson, it might be the kind of deal that pays off for years. Another interesting possibility is Kayvon Thibodeau. Coming out of Oregon, he was considered one of the top defensive prospects in his draft class. His early career has been solid, and this season he's been productive with multiple pressures, stops in the run game, and sacks through the first 3 weeks. He has a strong pass rush win rate, and his skill set fits what the Niners like to do up front. Plus, he is under contract beyond this season since the Giants picked up his 5th-year option. If New York continues to struggle, sitting at 0-3 with a brutal schedule ahead, they might be willing to part ways with him to collect draft capital for their rebuild. Jalen Phillips is another name worth mentioning. At 26 years old, he is a gifted athlete who, before tearing his Achilles, was putting together an impressive start to his career. He posted 8.5 sacks in his rookie year, followed that with 7 in year 2, and added 6.5 in year 3. The injury obviously slowed him down, but he has returned to action this season faster than many expected, which says a lot about his resilience and athleticism. If he gets fully back to form, he could still become a major defensive force. And then there's Cam Jordan. At 34 years old, he is closer to the end than the beginning, but he remains effective. A Saints legend, Jordan has over 120 career sacks, 8 Pro Bowl selections, and 3 All-Pro honors. He is a future Hall of Famer without question, and while he might not be the long-term answer, he could provide leadership, toughness, and situational pass rushing ability. Sometimes adding a veteran presence like that does more than just help on the field. It can stabilize a locker room and send a clear message that the team is all in on competing right now. San Francisco's decision will likely depend on how the next few weeks play out. They have a cushion thanks to their unbeaten start and a relatively favorable schedule. But if the defense suddenly looks vulnerable and opposing quarterbacks start enjoying too much time in the pocket, the pressure will mount to make a move. For now, the team is going to lean on Robert Beal, Drake Jackson, and the rest of the rotation to try and keep things steady. But you get the sense that the front office is ready to act if needed, and history shows they are not afraid to pull the trigger when the right opportunity comes along. So as we keep digging into the situation, the reality is clear. The San Francisco defense has to reinvent itself on the fly. Without Nick Bosa crashing the pocket every single snap, the scheme becomes a little less straightforward and a lot more about adjustments. That is where Robert Saleh's creativity and the depth of this roster come into play. It is not just about one player trying to be Bosa. That is impossible. It is about everyone else doing just a little more. Drake Jackson needs to develop consistency in his pass rush. Arik Armstead has to use his length and power to disrupt from the interior. Javon Hargrave, who is a big addition, must be a consistent force collapsing the pocket from inside. Even linebackers like Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw may be asked to attack more often than usual, blitzing off the edges or through the middle to confuse offensive lines. It is a puzzle with many pieces, and the coaching staff is trying to fit them together in real time. The idea of bringing in a trade piece, though, continues to hover in the background. We already went through some big names, but there are even more under-the-radar players who could be in play. Take someone like Quinnen Williams' teammate Quinnen is untouchable, but the Jets have other edge defenders who might be available if their season continues to spiral. Kwity Paye is another name that has floated around. Coming out of Michigan, he had the traits teams love and has flash potential with 8 sacks last year. He is in a contract year, and that means his current team might be open to moving him rather than risk losing him for nothing. For San Francisco, that kind of addition would not just be about replacing production, but also about adding depth so that the defensive line does not wear down over the course of a long season. There are also players like Azeez Ojulari, who has been inactive in every game for Philadelphia so far. He is young, only 24 years old, and when healthy, he has shown he can bend the edge and generate real pressure. His explosiveness fits what San Francisco looks for, and sometimes a change of scenery can revive a player's trajectory. Or maybe the front office looks at someone like Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, a former first-round pick who did not fully pan out in Tampa Bay. He might not be a starter in San Francisco, but as a rotational piece, He could give just enough to keep the line fresh and maintain some of that relentless energy that this defense thrives on. While names are flying around, the timing of any move is the biggest factor. The Niners are in a position of strength with 3 early wins and a relatively manageable stretch ahead. That cushion gives them the luxury to evaluate their own roster before spending assets. If Robert Beal, Drake Jackson, and the others manage to show promise, maybe the team waits. But if the pass rush disappears and opposing quarterbacks start picking apart the secondary because there is no pressure, the urgency will skyrocket. That is when John Lynch will have to pull the trigger. And history suggests he is never afraid to swing big when he feels the moment demands it. One thing that should not be overlooked is how the secondary ties into all of this. Coverage and pressure are linked. Without Bosa creating havoc up front, corners and safeties are going to be tested more than ever. Charvarius Ward, Diamador Lenore, and Talanoa Hufanga have to be disciplined, smart, and sharp in their communication. If the front four is not collapsing the pocket quickly, then the back end has to buy extra time by sticking to receivers longer, disguising coverages, and making quarterbacks hesitate. Even 1 extra second can give a guy like Beal or Jackson the opportunity to make an impact. That means the defense is entering a phase where every position group has to lean on one another. It is no longer just the pass rush dominating on its own. It is a collective effort. And here is where the human element comes in. Losing a player like Bosa is not only about production. It is about losing a tone setter. Every team looks to certain individuals for energy, leadership, and inspiration. Bosa is that kind of presence. So the challenge for San Francisco is also psychological. Who steps up in the locker room to keep the edge sharp? Who makes the big play early in a game to light the spark? Sometimes it is not the biggest star who takes on that responsibility. It could be a veteran like Armstead. It could even be a young player trying to prove himself like Beal. The ripple effect of losing Bosa is about identity, and the Niners have to rediscover how they want to impose their will on opponents. Fans should also keep in mind that Kyle Shanahan has built this team around resilience. Injuries have hit this franchise repeatedly in recent years, yet somehow they always find ways to adjust and keep pushing forward. That speaks to the depth of the roster, the adaptability of the coaching staff, and the culture that has been established. That culture will be tested again, and how the team responds over the next month could determine whether they stay on track as one of the league's true contenders. Because as good as the offense has looked with Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle, this team is at its best when the defense is suffocating. Without that, the margin for error shrinks dramatically. There is also the financial side to consider. Extending Bosa to his massive deal was already a huge commitment. Adding another high-priced edge rusher would mean some tough cap decisions down the line. That is why the front office might prefer a younger player on a rookie contract or a veteran rental who does not break the bank. It is a balancing act between maximizing the present and protecting the future. Shanahan and Lynch have always walked that line carefully, but the temptation to go all in is strong when a team is this close to competing for another Super Bowl. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to 49ers Zone and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the San Francisco 49ers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. The air outside the 49ers headquarters was electric yesterday, as fans gathered in anticipation, but no one expected the scene that unfolded. TJ Watt, the league's premier defensive force, reportedly arrived at the team's facility in what some are calling a moment straight out of a Hollywood movie. Witnesses describe flashes from cameras, cheers echoing down the streets, and a palpable sense of excitement that seems almost unprecedented for a single-player visit. According to onlookers, Watt was greeted with what can only be described as a full-blown celebration. Confetti, banners, and even chants of his name welcomed him to the Bay Area, leaving many to speculate about the nature of this visit. Is it merely a courtesy call, or is there something more significant brewing behind closed doors? Rumors have begun to swirl that the 49ers could be making a serious push to land one of the league's most dominant pass rushers. While no official announcements have been made, sources close to the team hint that talks have been very encouraging, fueling the imagination of fans and analysts alike. Social media erupted almost instantly, with clips of Watt's arrival spreading like wildfire. Pundits are already weighing in. Some suggest this could signal a blockbuster trade, while others think it might be the start of a larger strategy to reinforce the team's defensive line. Watt himself appeared relaxed, waving to the crowd and engaging with the media in a manner that seemed to suggest he's comfortable with the attention, but careful not to reveal too much. For now, all signs point to a growing buzz that the 49ers are serious about shaking up the league, and Watt's presence at the headquarters has only intensified that chatter. Fans are left imagining what a combination of Watt's elite skills and San Francisco's strategic prowess could mean for next season. One thing is certain. The rumor mill has officially gone into overdrive, and everyone in the NFL world is watching, wondering if this celebratory visit is the calm before a historic storm. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the San Francisco 49ers, make sure to subscribe to 49ers Zone and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.